Hi, this is Keith Farrow, and today I'm going to be talking about the identification of some of the major pests that you'll come across as a pest manager, and also a little bit about the environments that you're going to meet these pests in, which also helps with their identification. So let's get started. We'll be looking at the cockroaches, the ants, and some spiders. Not all of the pests that you're ever going to see, but some of the major and most common ones that you'll experience in the first part of your time as a pest manager. So let's get cracking and have a look at how we identify these. So it's a PowerPoint presentation and I'll be talking through it. So just give me a second, I'll start the PowerPoint. Sorry about that. I didn't realise it was not at the beginning. Okay, so here we go. We're going to be talking about the pests and we're going to start with the cockroaches. And the first cockroach we're going to talk about is the German cockroach. Now, identification. This cockroach is actually quite small. It's about 1 centimetre, 12 millimetres in length. And one of the statements we get from nearly everybody doing courses is that the first time they see them, they go, wow, that's small. I thought it would be much larger. So this is a small cockroach, like I say, around about 10 to 12 millimetres in length. Now, the colour here on this slide is pretty close to the colour of the cockroach when you're going to find it. So if we look at it, you'll see right at the very front on that first segment in the thorax, there are two dark longitudinal markings. And that is really indicative of this cockroach. That is going to tell you if you've got a small cockroach, that 10 to 12 millimetres in size, and it's got those longitudinal markings on the first segment of the thorax, then you are dealing with a German cockroach. If we look over here, we will see this is an immature nymph cockroach, and you can see those longitudinal markings actually carry on right across the body. But in the adult males and females, the markings disappear because the wings cover them up, whereas the nymphs don't have wings, and so they're not. You can see them. Now, these cockroaches, they are very urbanised. They live almost totally inside, so they're a really domestic problem. I don't think well, no, I have. I've seen them outside on 2 occasions, and it was really rare, and there was a really solid reason for them to be out there. But usually you will never see these things outside. They'll be in kitchens, they can be in lounge rooms, and they can be in bedrooms, provided the environment is such that they're going to get what they want. They'll certainly be in restaurant kitchens, they'll be in pubs and clubs, in the bars and the restaurants in those areas, dining rooms as well. So these cockroaches like warm, moist conditions, and they don't like being too far from a food source. So they'll stay as close to the food source and the warmth and moisture as they can. So kitchens are ideal. Now, they feed and move around at night time, not too much in the day. If you start seeing these cockroaches, or your client starts to see these cockroaches during the day, it means the population is very big. They're unable to all feed at night, so some of them, the weaker of the population, have to go and feed during the day. So if you're seeing them during the day, it is a major issue. So where to look for these cockroaches? They're going to be in little cracks and crevices inside the kitchen mainly. They'll start out near dishwashers and fridges, near stoves, under sinks, in the cracks and the areas around the sink, underneath the sink, inside the cupboard, hidden away. They'll be behind packaging. They'll be in the wall cavity, behind the sink, in the area between the cupboard and the wall, just below the cupboard, behind the kick plates they can get once the population starts to move. Inside drawers, they'll be in the drawer cavity itself. They'll be along the running rails of the drawers. They can be behind the drawers. And they can be also inside packaging if the packaging gets left. If the bottoms of the drawers or the bases of the drawers have cardboard or plastic bags in them, they will hide and secret themselves inside there. If people are storing cardboard with the wrinkly cardboard, they'll get inside the wrinkles and they'll store themselves and hide inside those places. These are a secretive cockroach and they will hide and get into anywhere. So when you're doing a cockroach job or you're trying to find these, it means opening up cupboards and having a look, almost getting inside the cupboard to see where these things are hiding. They'll get into any hollow area that's close to where they want to breed. Now, what will also happen as the population builds up and the spaces get filled up, they'll move further and further and further away from the point at which they started. So if your conditions in the kitchen are found inside a bedroom, they will be there. So for instance, if you've got a person in the house that wants to eat their dinner and leaves bottles and cans and whatnot, plus food wrappers around inside their bedroom, it's highly likely you'll get cockroaches in there. If someone eats their food in front of the TV, on the couch or a chair, and they spill a bit and there's a bit of moisture and food and that stuff around, then the cockroaches can be there as well. But generally it's a kitchen problem. And what we do inside the kitchen really helps keep this cockroach there. If we don't put things away, if we keep food out, if we don't wash dishes, if the food scraps are left in an open bin, an open container, we are providing a huge smorgasbord for this cockroach. Plenty of food, plenty of moisture, plenty of places to secret themselves, and so the population can quickly get out of hand. So you don't just treat this cockroach, you also deal with the environment, which is something you've got to talk to your customer about. Okay, that's the German cockroach in a nutshell. Let's have a look at the next one. Now, this is the American cockroach, and you are definitely going to find this. It's a much bigger cockroach. We're talking over 30 millimetres in length, and they can get very large, these ones. So, how do we identify them? Well, you can see from the photo here that they're actually quite a pleasant, actual reddy brown colour, quite a deep colour. And on the front thoracic segment, the area around the thoracic segment is quite light in colour, and that is very indicative of this cockroach. That's the telltale point. You can have a look at it and go, okay, it's very light on that front thoracic segment, but there's no other marking really visible on the cockroach. And that will tell you you've got a large cockroach. It's got the light marking around the front thoracic segment, no markings on the wings or any other part of the cockroach. You're dealing with an American cockroach. So where do you find this one? Well, this one, people will see it inside the kitchen. It'll be walking around inside the kitchen at night. Again, it's a secretive cockroach. You're not going to see them during the day unless the population is just huge. So they'll see it at night time. They may get inside the kitchen cupboards and start living inside the kitchen cupboards, but more often than not, you'll find them in subfloors and roof voids. They may be outside around barbecue areas as well, and in the shed up the backyard. But most of the time when these are a problem, they're inside the house because they're inside the roof void, the subfloor, the wall cavities, and then moving into the kitchen from there. You can get them through the rest of the house. They'll go into all areas of the house, this cockroach. They can move around and get their food. But like any other thing, it'll stay as close as possible to the food. These also like dark, humid areas, and that's where they'll live. So you'll see them roof void, inside the house, subfloor, in the wall cavities, and in areas outside, as long as it's quite sheltered, like the barbecue area, and not too far away, or in the shed. And again, the same as with any other cockroach, if you provide the food and the water and the shelter areas, this cockroach can breed up quickly in a very short space of time. So hygiene and cleanliness inside the kitchen and other areas of the house are really very important. If you don't deal with that, you don't deal with the cockroach. Moving to the next one. This is the Australian cockroach. Now here, this can be a tad smaller than the American cockroach, but otherwise they're kind of similar in size. This is can be a few millimetres smaller, but it's still a big cockroach, bigger certainly than the German cockroach. We're talking about 25, 30 mils again. Now, if we look here, that first thoracic segment, it has a light edge around it, just the same as in the American cockroach, and the colouring of the cockroach itself is kind of similar. If we look, however, at the wings, you'll see there's light markings on the front part of the forewing, so the front wing. Right at the front of that, there are markings on it, light strips of it. And that will tell you that you've got the Australian cockroach. Remember, the American cockroach is the same colour right across from after the first thoracic segment. It's the same colour. The Australian cockroach isn't. It has these white markings on the front of the wings. Now, Steve King, our other trainer, he came up with a great system on this, so that this, hopefully you remember it. The American cockroach always wears sunglasses. The Australian cockroach, well, they wear sunglasses as well, but they also put on a chesty bond singlet. So hopefully you remember that. The Americans, bare-chested, no singlet, but sunglasses. The Australians, we wear a singlet and we wear sunglasses. Hopefully that'll keep the cockroaches apart. You'll be able to tell them apart. And why do you need to tell them apart? Well, the Australian cockroaches, you are more inclined to find those hiding and secreting themselves away in the yard. They'll be around they'll certainly get in the subfloor and again inside the roof void, but they'll also be around the mulched areas of the garden. They'll be in wood piles. They'll be in leaf litter. They'll be sitting in areas outside where you're not generally going to find the American cockroach. That's where the Australian cockroach lives. And so if you're finding Australian cockroaches inside the house, have a look outside and see if they're coming from somewhere into the house, or are they breeding inside the house, and therefore you've got to look inside the subfloor and the roof. But they will probably start it outside. Again, look for all the things that are going to, for the reasons why this cockroach will be inside: the food, the moisture, actually how it accessed the building in the first place. So that's important. If you can deal with those, you can start dealing with the cockroach. But this cockroach, likes to be more of an outside one rather than an inside one, even though you will definitely find it inside. The slides, the two other photos actually show you different parts of this the life cycle of this cockroach. You can see at the top photograph on the right, that's a newly hatched egg case. And those cockroaches are very young nymphs. It's quite enlarged. They're nowhere near that big as on the slide, but that's what you're getting out of the cockroach egg case. If you go to the one down, you'll see there's adult cockroaches here, but next to them are quite old nymphs. So these nymphs are several stages in. They're not very far from becoming an adult, and you'll see there are markings all the way down the cockroach. That's because the cockroach hasn't got wings in the nymphal stage, and so you can see all the markings on the body. Those markings can stay on the body, just they get covered up by the wings. So if you're seeing the nymphs of any cockroach population, you are dealing with a breeding population, a population that's growing and getting bigger and going to be much more annoying to your client. If they've got a breeding population in their property and you're getting all phases of the life cycle, this is a growing population and needs to be dealt with, and dealt with reasonably quickly before it can get out of hand. So that's the Australian cockroach. Now, let's have a look at a couple of telltale signs for cockroaches. So here on the screen now, you've got some egg cases. They're called ootheca, and cockroaches lay all their eggs inside a little purse, and the little purse is called an ootheca. Now, there are 4 here. I'm not going to discuss all 4. We'll look at the German and the American cockroach oothecas. Now, they're very enlarged. They're nowhere near this big. The German cockroach one is much smaller than the cockroach itself, of course. And inside that, you're going to find upwards of 30 eggs inside this ootheca. So you can see when she lays the egg or drops the ootheca, which she will do a few hours before it hatches, the population can grow quite quickly. So 30 eggs at a time, and they can all interbreed, and bang, you've got a population going on and increasing at quite a rapid rate. If you see these eggs or egg cases, the ootheca or opened ones, you have, and you've got the cockroaches as well, you've got a breeding population. In the top right hand, we've got the American cockroach, and they're similar to the Australian cockroach ootheca, and what they will do is they cement them to areas. So she will drop that ootheca or cement it to the wall soon after she forms it, and it will sit there for a period of time until the eggs are ready to hatch, and then they will hatch. And you're going to sort of get up to 20 eggs or more inside that ootheca. So again, this thing can breed pretty quickly, and the population can certainly get out of hand very fast, like certainly over a season is no problem at all. And if you see these and they're viable, so you touch them and you squish them, then you've got a breeding population. They're going to increase. So they're the ootheca, the egg cases, and it's a telltale signs that cockroaches are there and that they're breeding. Here's another one. Now this again is American cockroaches, and what we're looking at is the inside of a cupboard door. And all those little black marks on there are actually cockroach defecation, like cockroach poo, and regurgitation marks. And this particular property was really, really infested with American cockroaches. And the pest manager who went and did the job actually didn't spray or anything. What they did, they used cockroach bait. You can see in the top right-hand corner, that's the two light-coloured dobs. That's cockroach bait. Now, in this particular case, the issue here was that the cockroach bait got devoured really, really quickly, and that the person had to come back many, many, many times and actually sort of said that the cockroaches are just eating the bait and the bait's not working. It wasn't so much that, it's just that the population was so big and they were using very small amounts of bait, and it just wasn't getting through the population. So just be aware, if you see a big population, you've got to deal with it very quickly, otherwise it's going to get out of hand. And just trying to use bait there probably is not going to be as effective as it could be. It's a whole job. You've got to deal with the environment, plus do whatever it is you're going to do in order to reduce the population. And look for the telltale signs. They will always help tell you whether it's a big or a relatively small infestation. So now we're going to move on to ants, and the first ant we're going to look at is the white-footed house ant. Now, this ant here is it's a reasonably robust ant, but it's still small. You're only looking at a few millimetres in length. And one of the telltale signs with this ant is that it's got very light tarsi, or the end of the legs. They're quite light in colour, and the ant itself is black, but it's not very shiny. It's quite a dull black. Now, one of the things you're going to need when you do any pest identification is a hand lens or a magnifying glass and a good light so that you can actually see what you're looking at. And if you use those on this ant, you'll actually see those light-coloured feet, as it were, and that it's a dull black in colour. So that's the white-footed house ant. But where does it live? Once this thing is inside the house, it can live inside the walls, it can live inside the pantry cupboards in the kitchen, in the walls, in the roof, and it can be in the subfloor, but it will love sitting inside the wall cavities, up in the roof, and behind the cupboards. Now, this ant can have many, many, many queens, and the nests they bud out, so each queen can start her own nest as they develop. So this ant can develop inside the building very quickly, and the population can be huge. If it's let go for a long, long time, you could have hundreds of ant nests inside the walls, and they're very, very difficult to get rid of because you can't get into the walls. So this ant needs to be dealt with fast. Now, you can do many things with the ant, and we're not going to go into treatments right at this point in time, but this ant, you need to identify it to make sure that you know it's the white-footed house ant, that the risk is the population will grow and it will grow out of hand very quickly unless dealt with. Why is it in the kitchen in the first place or in the house? It's come in for food. These are a sugar feeder. They love sweet things, so they'll be looking at honey or sugary biscuits or icings or whatever it might be. They will feed on other things from time to time, but they really, really love sweet things. So what does the homeowner have to do, or what is your recommendation? Stop them getting into those sweet things. If they're leaving stuff out, it's got to go away. These ants are there because we're providing it, or your client is providing it with what it needs. It's got moisture and it's got food. Start removing those, and you make the place less liked by the ant, and it can go elsewhere in an early infestation. If they wait too long, it'll be entrenched inside the house, and you'll have a lot of work to get rid of it. So that's the white-footed house ant. It's got those light colours on the end of the feet, and also on the end of the antennae, and it's a dull black in colour. Remember, you're going to need a hand lens or a magnifying glass. The next one is the black house ant. Now, this is black as well, and its feet are kind of light, but not really light, nowhere near as light as the white-footed house ant, and the antennae are the same. The other thing about this ant, and the photo isn't great, it's been enlarged, of course, but this ant is a very shiny black. So when you see it compared to the white-footed house ant, it glows. So it's reasonably easy to see the difference between these two. Now, why do you have to differentiate them? They're both black ants. They're both house ants. They both get in the house. This one prefers to be outside. It prefers to nest in the yard and be a problem in the garden, and then come into the house from outside. Yep, they will nest inside the walls. Yeah, they can get up inside the roof, but their preference is to be outside in the garden. So these can be dealt with in a very different way. They, however, also come inside because your client is providing them with the food and the shelter and the water that they need. So again, attacking it from that end is important. They are a sweet, sugary feeder. So again, your honeys, your spilt cordials, your teas with sugar in it, all that sort of stuff is a food for this sort of ant. If that's dealt with, then the ant has started to be dealt with, and the problem could disappear in an early infestation, could disappear back outside because the food is already gone. Okay, so that's the black house ant. Really shiny, really black, and a tad smaller than the white-footed house ant, but really and truly, unless you've got, we can compare, you're not going to tell the difference. So there's the black house ant. Shiny black and not really light in the feet or the end of the antenna. You're going to need a hand lens. The next one, fortunately for you, it's a different colour, so you don't have to worry about it being black. This is called the coastal brown ant, and it's a major problem across most areas of Australia, not just the coast. It's relatively easy to identify. It's quite small, not minuscule, but it is quite small. Again, it's a few millimetres in length, and it comes in two sizes. You'll have the vast majority of the workers being a similar size, and then you've got these really, really big soldiery type ants with a big head, and some people call it the big-headed ant. And you can see here on the slide, you've got the standard size soldier and these big ants. I mean, they're 3 to 4 times the size, so they're very big and they're very obvious even with the naked eye. You don't need a hand lens to see these big chaps. So that's the identification. Where do they live? These ones like outside. Yeah, they'll come inside, but they really want to be outside. And these are an oil feeder. So these things will feed on fats and oils predominantly. They will change around to feed on other things, but predominantly they'll feed on fats and oils. So where do you think these are going to be found around the house? If you said around the barbecue, you're absolutely right. As with all Australian barbecues, and mine included, probably I don't clean it as much as it should be, and it doesn't get de-oiled or de-fatted as much as possible, as much as I should. And therefore, these ants can get into the barbecue because they just go there to feed. And only small amounts of fats and oil are enough to attract them. Remember, ants are small. They don't need, they don't need garbage bags full of food to survive. They have they only need small amounts. So these ants will be found around those sorts of areas, and then they just get worse from there once you've attracted them to the area of the yard, that area of the house, I should say. These ants are also the ones that are going to get between the pavers. Now, they nest underneath the pavers and they throw all the sand and dirt out from between the pavers. So these ones, if you're going outside and you're seeing a brown ant and dirt patches, all like little ant hills all over the pavers, that is the coastal brown ant. So I'm not going into management methods here, really. It's just identification and knowing what they're after. Start to clean up the area and you start to reduce the problem. But if they've got a nest under the pavers, you're going to have to deal with it, and we will be talking about treatments at a later stage. Okay, so they're the ants. Now let's look at the spiders. So these aren't every spider you're going to see, and certainly not everyone you're going to be asked to treat. These are just some of the major ones and some of the really quite common ones that people are going to ask you questions about and say, get rid of them. And they always want spiders killed because a lot of people are scared of them. Some of them rightly so, because they bite and they can hurt, and we have the odd one or two that are actually fatal if they do bite, or can be. But we're just scared. People are scared of spiders because they're oftentimes hairy and they have a lot of legs and they surprise us. And we always think they're going to eat us, I think. So this one here is the redback. Now, it's pretty plain to see why this is called the redback. It has a red stripe down its abdomen. So here, this is the back part of the spider, it's the abdomen, and there's a red stripe. Now be careful, because this red stripe is not always the same. It can be on the top or the bottom of the abdomen. It can be a couple of small dots, or it can be like this one, a very, very vivid red mark down the outside. It can almost disappear in some cases, but you will find a red dot somewhere on this thing, and that's the redback spider. This is the female. The male's a tiny weenie, like a really small spider, and there'll be about 10 of them around the outside of her web. So this is the redback spider. Now, with the redback, they can get inside, but they're predominantly an outside bug, an outside pest. And the thing with these is that their nest, she will build the web relatively low down, or at least within 30 or 40 centimetres, 30 to 50 centimetres of the ground. It's just the way the web works, and that's how she will build the web. Now, you can get it higher up. It can be inside boxes that are off the ground, but again, it's inside a box, and so like a fire extinguisher box or an emergency services box at a factory. They'll be inside there where the fire extinguishers or the water hoses are, or the sprinkler system turning on segment, or inside the meter box. But again, it's the web will be structured so that it's not very far from the base of that box. Now, they can also get inside roller doors. So where the roller door all rolls up inside that tube at the top there, they can be inside there, again, because it's a limited space and she can get the web so that it's only 30 or so centimetres, 40 centimetres from the ground. That's important. So when you're doing inspection for these spiders, you're looking underneath things because they tend to be low down. So under chairs, under tables, in children's toys that are just left out in the backyard, inside Wellington boots that haven't been used for a while, inside drains, the covered drains, the gutter drains that go around the outside of the house with the grating over the top, that's where they can be. If you've got rockeries, they can be under the rockery areas. These are a spider that will infest lots of places. Under the lids of garbage bins, they will be. So it's a thorough look, but you tend to have to look low down or in areas that are enclosed and to find the spider and deal with it that way. So that's the redback. Let's move on. And the next one we've got is the black house spider. Now this spider can bite and it is a bit painful, but it's not going to kill anybody. The bite is just a nasty. It can be quite a nasty bite. It can give you reasonably intense pain, and then it can be really itchy for quite a while. But it doesn't do any much more than that. The reason this spider is a problem, however, is because of its webbing. This spider can almost take over the outside of the house. If you're in country areas, you'll find this spider can absolutely cover the outside of a property, and you'll drive up and you go, it looks like a furry property, and it is. It's covered in spiders' webs. It'll happen in the domestic urban environment as well, if people let it go, but generally it doesn't get that far. Now, the webs will start off in areas around door frames and window frames, so such as this one here. You can see this is the end of a window, and there's the web around the window. Now, if you look at the top photograph here, you will see the web is made up of small little boxes of web, and it's called a ladder web, and that's really the way this spider grows the web or builds the web, and it's indicative of this spider or this group of spiders. So if you're seeing this sort of web around the house, it's highly likely going to be caused by the black house spider. Now, if you look at the spider, you can see that it's actually not really black. It sort of goes from grey to black. There's quite a few variants and they're different sorts of colours, but that web will say the black house spider. The other thing about their web is it will have a kind of funnel in it, and the spider will disappear up the back of the funnel and disappear into a little nook or cranny behind that. So oftentimes you won't see the spider, but you can tell it by the web. And the web gets bigger and bigger and bigger the longer the spider has been there, and gets more and more dense, and it becomes more and more obvious. And the spider when the spider's breeding, those webs will then start to cover the entire house. So it does become a problem if left untouched. So that is the black house spider. Oh, why is it there? It's there because the bug's coming towards the house, usually at night time or any time when the spider's catching it, but we're probably attracting a high number of bugs. And so with any spider where we're attracting bugs to the house, which are the spider's prey, we're attracting it probably at night time with lights. So there's lots of lights on. They're attracting the bugs around the house, and so bang, the spider's prey goes up, so the population goes up. Pretty simple, really. Now, this one. This one is infamous, the white tail or white tip spider. It's around about the 20 mil long. It's a reasonable sized spider, but it's not huge. It bites and it's painful. I've been bitten by one of these spiders and it hurts. And then once the pain goes away within a day, it itches like crazy, or at least it did me. The issue with this spider is that it's been believed, or is believed, that by various parties that it causes some sort of necrotic lesion to grow, and then ultimately your finger or your toe or your foot can fall off depending on where you got bitten. Now that's been put out for many years now, but in a reasonably recent study in the last 5 or 6 years, a study was done between Adelaide University and another university and hospital inside New Zealand, in Christchurch actually, and they have come forward and said, no, this spider does not cause it. Their belief is that the spider actually carries around a bacteria on the fangs because it's a ground-dwelling spider, and when it bites, the bacteria happens to be on the fangs, and you may get the bacterial infection which causes the lesions. That's their theory. So it's not the spider, it's the spider not washing its fangs after it's been walking around the garden. Either way, I don't know which one's right, but certainly I've been bitten and it didn't cause that issue with me. So let's have a look at it. It's quite a long spider. The abdomen's not big, so some people describe it as a cigar shape, so long and fat. But this tip at the end is the telltale sign, and that tip can be white to a dull grey colour. So it's not always going to be the same, but you look generally for the shape and that white dot at the back. In some spiders, it looks like someone's actually attacked it with some whiteout fluid, and you've got this big white blob at the back end of it. So that's the shape. Think of that as the shape of the spider. There's not that many spiders that have that shape. There are others, but they don't have this white tip at the back or white tail at the back. They're a ground dweller, so they don't make a standard web nest. They do make webbing, but you're not going to see it very much. They walk around looking for prey. Believe it or not, one of their major food sources is the black house spider. So if you've got lots of black house spiders, you probably haven't got this. And if you've got lots of black house spiders, it's highly likely that you may get this as it comes, because it'll find it and suddenly lots of food, and so their population will go up. The thing with spiders that wander around as ground-dwelling spiders is that during the day they don't wander; they stay out of sight. So as the sun comes up, these spiders will go and hide, as do most ground-dwelling spiders. And where they hide is in little dark nooks and crannies away from sunlight to protect themselves during the day. So these spiders are going to dive for cover when the sun comes up, and that means they're going to be sitting under rocks, under bits of timber, between rocks, between timber. They can actually run underneath a door because it looks dark under the door, and then they're inside the house unless there's a draft excluder on the door, in which case they can't get underneath it. They will go inside boots, inside shoes. If you've got the washing basket left outside, they'll duck under the washing basket, or if there's something in it, they'll duck inside the washing basket and sit under that as well. So these spiders will look for anything dark, any little nook and cranny around the place to hide in during the day. Even just under bushes and mulch, they will hide. So that's the area where these hide. And what they're looking for other spiders and insects to devour. So they're hunter-gatherers. White-tailed spider. Right, this one. These are pretty scary. These are big spiders. I mean, you're talking about a body that can be the size of your thumb up to the knuckle. So, and you're talking about legs like this. So these things can get very large. And they're just orb spiders, the whole range of them, and they make really big, beautiful webs, and they stretch between the house and trees or between two trees, and the webs can be well over 1 metre in diameter and stretch and go over several metres. So these are big spiders in big webs. And the webs are very, very strong. You've probably dealt with a web before. You're walking down the yard or between the house and the fence with a bin on bin night, and you walk into a web, and it's like walking into cotton or some sort of string stretched across in front of you. That's an orb weaving spider. The web is very, very, very strong. And when you walk into it, you probably do this because you're really worried that the spider is going to attack you, eat you up, bite you, whatever it is, but we get scared because it's a spider and we know they're big and they're horrible and they're hairy. Well, these spiders are actually really quite good for the environment. Indeed, most spiders are. They just happen to be, we just don't like them because they look nasty, because they've got 8 legs and they can bite. But these spiders are particularly good. These spiders will remove the mosquitoes, they remove moths, they remove flies from around our house and around our particular living environment. They are very good at that. Those webs are built at night time. The spiders catch their food at night time. The webs are very good at locating them or catching them as they fly through, and they'll remove them from our environment. The web during the day, it can stay there, but usually gets destroyed because of wind or animals or birds or people walking through them. So they build their web every night or repair it every night. And if you look at them, they can, as they grow, they get quite big, and you'll see bits and pieces of leftover food inside the web, and the webs will become really tangled and go from being a beautiful looking orb to being quite an untidy mess of a whole bunch of orbs all stuck together. So why am I going on about this one? Really, if you can get away with it, don't treat these spiders. Just get the customer to trim trees back so that they're not so close to the building. Go around and wipe them off with a feather duster or a stick and put them somewhere else. Move them, because these are really good spiders. We don't want to turn the backyard into a no-go zone for any animal or any insect, or in this case, arachnid, because they're not insects. So think about it. We're not in the business of destroying the environment. We're in the business of managing pests, not killing everything that walks or crawls around the backyard. These are good bugs, and if we can, we should leave them where they are. Prune the trees, get them back by that, but don't just go and kill them because they are good. Where do they live during the day, by the way? They'll be on the trees where the web starts, or they'll be sitting on the house underneath, guttering around where the eaves are, secreting and hiding themselves inside those little areas there. That's why it's important to keep those trees back from the house, and so that the webs aren't going to get to the house. And then they're between the trees, and we know that. We just don't walk that way. The other thing here, if bugs are flying around the house, why are they flying around the house and getting caught by these? It's because the house is attracting them. The lights at night are attracting the bugs to the house, and so the spiders are now taking those bugs that are being attracted out of the environment. Why are they being attracted? Because we've got the house a blaze of light, and the bugs are attracted to the light. If we don't want the bugs, we change the light, either remove them or change the light colour to yellow, which is much, much less attractive to other insects, and therefore the food will diminish. If the food diminishes, then the spider population will diminish as well. So if you can, don't spray them. Yeah, they're big, they're hairy, but they're unlikely to bite unless you do something really, really silly, like trying to hold it in your hand. Otherwise, they're just as scared of us as we are of them, and they'll try and run away. Okay, so that's the garden orb, and that's the end of the slideshow. So hopefully we've actually done something here with regard to sorting out a few things on identifying the spiders, identifying the ants, and identifying the cockroaches that you are going to come across early on and consistently throughout your pest management career, and the ones that most people are going to have a problem with. Yet, like I said, there are others, and you will be able to identify those as you go through and learn how to identify the insects or the pests that you are dealing with. But right now, they are the major ones inside the arthropod class, that is the insects and the arachnids, and like insects and spiders. And hopefully you know a little bit more now about the identification of very specific pests and the environments that those pests like. And remember, we are not just alone in treating these. The homeowner, your client, has as big a role to play in the managing of their pest problem as you do. And you cannot treat a problem without first identifying it. That is vital. If you don't identify it, you will never treat it, or at least not properly anyway. Okay, so thanks for that, and hope it was all right, and we'll catch you next time. Cheers. Bye.